and welcome to episode 32 of That 60s Recording Podcast, the podcast that has conversations inspired by the golden era of recording. I hope you've all had a lovely week. I think this is number 3 now of the weekly ones, so I hope you're all enjoying the fact that these are a little bit more regular. Another little bit of news, started uploading all of these to YouTube. So if you're listening to this and YouTube is a preferred method, or if you know somebody who enjoys listening to things on YouTube, you can go and do that. So if you search All You Need Is Drums, I've made a playlist of all of the episodes I've done so far. It's quite a backlog, really. There's quite a decent collection going on. And while we're on the subject of YouTube, there's something else I've been doing for a while that you guys may be interested in. So I used to run a night, sort of pre-pandemic, and hopefully it will start again, in Leeds called the Hootenanny, which was a house band of sort of session musicians, if you like, that would learn a singer-songwriter's songs, and then without rehearsal, we would just play them on the night, and it always made for a really special night. So I wanted to find a way to capture that at my studio. So I thought about doing covers, but live to my 2-track machine. So I've called it the 2-track sessions, and that's also on my YouTube. So All You Need Is Drums, and it's 2-track sessions, and the band is called the Hootenanny. So we've done lots of cover versions. I think there's 3 there so far, and we've got more to come. I'm making an album of these things, and it's all live, one take, straight to the tape machine, then obviously put into the computer and sent to Rare Tone Mastering, who was interviewed on this podcast, Ben Pike. And yeah, it's really cool. So that, warts and all, and I think you might really enjoy that. There's no plugins at all. It's all just going through my outboard gear, and I love it. I love working that way, and it was really special to have musicians come to the studio and play again after the pandemic and all the remote working. So yeah, that was really cool. Anyway, let's get into today's episode. So I'm talking with EveAnna Manley of Manley Laboratories. She is an incredibly inspirational woman. I just really admire her, and I thought I just enjoyed this conversation so much. There's loads of sage advice. If you don't know Manley Laboratories, they are specialist in valve equipment. So that's where the link is that I wanted to speak to her. So she talks about the way that valves work. She discusses the history of the company and sort of manufacturing gear that emulates sort of classic valve outboard gear. So yeah, hopefully a really interesting episode for you all. So let's dive in. Here we go, EveAnna Manley. I am really pleased to be joined by EveAnna Manley of Manley Laboratories. So you're in Chino, California?
Chino, not China, as we are prone to say.
Yeah.
Chino, California.
I actually hadn't ever heard of Chino, California before reading.
Well, then you probably haven't been incarcerated in Chino, California.
There's
a famous prison there. Yeah, you might not want to willingly go to Chino.
So you, if you're listening to this, you'll know EveAnna Manley from Manley Laboratories, who are makers of what is now becoming known as sort of modern classic gear. There's no better way to put it there. I was going to extend on that, but there's nothing else more to say, is there? That's what you guys
I'll take
do.
it.
Yeah, make incredibly high-end, beautiful gear that we'll all lust over for years to come. I think that's kind of what it is. So as I just said before I launched into this, the first question I want to ask you is something I heard in an interview you gave a couple of years ago, that while you're working, you like listening to French radio stations, specialising in sort of 60s and 70s psych music.
Well, 2 different stations.
Okay.
Actually,
I've got mixed up.
The one station that plays a wide variety of music, and sometimes does include some music from the 60s, would be the French radio station FIP.
Okay.
C'est le FIP. And you can stream it online at fip.fr.
Yeah.
And then it's also on like TuneIn Radio and Sonos Radio and all that. I play my Sonos radios like all day while I'm working. I'm
It
the
made me.
laziest audiophile ever at this point.
Well, I think it's kind of fun that when you have radio stations on like that, it's like being on holiday and you're in the car flicking through the stations and it's all stuff you've never heard before. And I quite.
Yeah, and they have a FIP World station that, you just don't know what you're going to get next on that. And there's a dedicated FIP rock station and then just general FIP. And on the weekends, I've found, of course, we've got a time delay from from France to California, but Sunday mornings in California, French radio Sunday night there is, man, I think that's the best time to listen to FIP. But the other station that plays all the rarer psychedelic music is called Psychedelicized.
Oh, cool.
And that's another internet station you can get on all the streaming platforms. And there's a lot of cool stuff on there. And they'll play like some obscure commercials from the day and all that. It's kind of
Nice.
neat.
I think that, it sounds.
It's cool.
I'm
It's
going to check
haunting
it
and
out.
chilling. Yeah, I dig that.
I think a lot of the people listening to this will be into that as well. So I'm going to check it out, and I'm going to put a link to it too because that sounds it sounds right up my street. So I'd like to go back to. I know that you've told stories about the way that you got to where you are at numerous times. So hopefully we can sort of talk about.
It does involve the '60s, doesn't it?
Yeah. So hopefully we can sort of get to the point where you're currently at and sort of work our way through, but then touch on a few things that particular things that I'd like to speak about as we go through that. So you grew up in Atlanta in a sort of an audiophile household. Is that fair to say?
Not audiophile, not compared to today's audiophiles, but
okay.
No, my parents had a Fisher 500C receiver and some two AR2AXs speakers and a Girard turntable and vinyl records. And I grew up playing the radio and playing records from a very early age. I was listening to Led Zeppelin when I was in kindergarten. I do remember that,
Oh, very cool.
I kind of skipped the baby records for the most part. I did, my first record player was a close and play, a little battery operated,
Oh, cool.
You put the record on and you close it and it will play.
That
like
makes
a little
sense.
Briefcase luggable thing.
Yeah. So you can't fiddle with the record while it's turning round.
I suppose, although we tried.
They always say you're sort of the product of what. Well, not specifically, but you're the product of what your parents listen to, and I certainly am. What I grew up listening to is what my mum and dad listened to, obviously, and Led Zeppelin's pretty cool to start on.
They were not listening to that.
Oh, they were not. That was your choice.
Oh hell no, that would be the devil's music, No, my father was listening to Beatles and Herb Alpert and a lot of very syrupy kind of 60s instrumental music. I think like Hank Jorkowski or some piano player like that, I guess. And then my mother, man, she listened to elevator music, like 1,001 strings in your head blaring through the house intercom system all day. It was like Nurse Ratched music, medication time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can
They'll watch
exactly.
Cuckoo's Nest and listen to that music again, and that's what it felt like.
So yours was a rebellion against that music.
I was playing, top 40 rock and roll from, age 3 on. I can say. I remember hooking on to Elton John's Daniel because my best friend when I was 3 years old was a kid named Daniel, and I used to walk around the corner to go visit him. So that's an early favorite song of mine. Lighter stuff, yeah, like the Carpenters. I really enjoyed them in the early 70s, and but Led Zeppelin, that that was my favorite song when I was in kindergarten. It was Dire Maker.
Oh, nice.
Or Jamaica or whatever. How do you pronounce that?
Were you playing instruments at this sort of what age were you starting to?
No,
to play?
In school they allowed us to join strings in 4th grade, and in exchange for that, we could skip social studies. So we all did that.
Yeah.
And then the cool kids could join band in 5th grade. So we all did that because we wanted to be cool kids. And then I got put on clarinet, and I had braces at the time. So I learned trumpet after I got my braces off in 8th grade. And I learned saxophone in 7th grade. And I played mostly woodwinds, saxes and clarinets in school. That's what I grew up doing.
A clarinet was my first instrument, actually, as well.
Nice.
Yeah, I wanted to play saxophone and got told I had to start on clarinet.
It's good discipline.
Yeah, and then never graduated onto saxophone.
Oh.
Yeah, well, I found a drum kit and I did that.
Oh, I see.
I'd love to play clarinet again, just for the nostalgic feeling. I think it'd be fun.
It's cool. 2 of my best friends play saxes and clarinet, so I've got all the instruments out. And when they come over, well, pre-COVID times that was, yeah, we'd all noodle around on the reed instruments. It was kind of fun.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So am I right in saying that your dad was the owner of Ampeg amps?
My stepfather.
Your stepfather, okay.
Had bought Ampeg from the founder, Everett Hall, and Al Dore was my stepfather's name. He bought that company in '66, I believe, and then saw that his kids, my step siblings, were very much into rock and roll, and he really tried to push the company towards the rock and roll market. So that's where this involvement with the 60s goes, because they developed the SVT during his time, and the Rolling Stones were using it, and there was a third of the stage at Ampeg, at Woodstock, that had Ampeg gear on it, of the rotating stage, and it was a big deal. But then his first wife died of alcoholism, and it really threw his head for a loop, and he sold the company to Magnavox in 1972, and then he met my mom in 75, I believe.
Okay.
And he was broke by that time, and that's how we got started with Big Al. So it was after all the glory of the Ampeg stuff. There was nothing left from it, except about 5 years later, he pulled some stuff out of storage. He had put in storage in 1970, basically, and that included about 200, late 60s LPs and about 250 45s, all, from about 1966 to 1970.
Wow.
And that I just grabbed those and absorbed those, and I listened. That's what I was listening to all through the 80s, basically. Nice. I kind of skipped the 80s and went right back to the 60s. For sure.
There are some people who could say that might be wise.
Well, that's where I dove deep into all that music at that time, so I'm still super fond of all that.
Oh, cool. So there was no real influence in that sort of amplifier history in your interest in music at all, or was that it didn't
just
sort of link together?
Because some of those psychedelic bands were customers and had given records to the kids, and I ended up with them, and they were into that. That's about it. That in the stories that Dad would tell us, just like meeting Johnny Cash or Eric Burden or whoever, and it's like, oh wow, I love those artists, that kind of thing. Yeah. Just being kind of a fan from afar. But I never was a guitar or bass player, or my hands are, I can't even. My hands hurt too much. So yeah, that was the influence there.
Did you have any sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Wish to go into music at that point? Were you looking to have a career in music?
Well, I was super torn between being a band geek and studying music theory and just loving music and the mechanics behind it all. I was torn between that and artistic proclivities, some might say. And so I didn't know, if I wanted to go into some kind of graphic arts or something like that, or go into something in music. And so I went to college and then decided to study music theory, basically. And then that one day, that famous person came to class, and that was Bill Graham of Bill Graham Presents, the famous '60s uh, concert promoter who owned Fillmore East and West and all that. And he explained the music business to us in that lecture that one day, and that's when I made the decision. I'm going to take the next semester off and go to California and go find Bill Graham Presents and try to find a job there. So that was that one day.
Amazing.
So that just nailed it for me.
That's so cool. I thought I thought that you might say there was one day someone explained the music industry and that I decided to not do it. But what did you say that drove you to sort of make such a bold decision?
Well, I guess I felt a connection, like it was achievable, like I could go and find him. That was my dream anyway, right? This is pre-internet. This is, 1988, 1989. So, I'm like, this is it. That's the light shining through. This is the opportunity. I'm going to go do this. And then I had a couple other friends in California, and so I had some kind of safety net, if you know what I mean. And it's actually that safety net that kept me in Southern California, where I didn't go up to Northern California and never re-met Bill Graham again. So I stayed in SoCal. I did some work for my high school band director, who had a small business here, and did some inventory work for him. And then my stepfather gave me those three names of some ex-Ampeg guys, and I called those. The first guy didn't pick up the phone. The second guy at Fender did, and then he's the one who introduced me to David and Luke Manley. And so it wasn't. It was just like, I'm young. I've got all the time in the world, literally, right in front of me. I'm gonna just pursue any open opportunities that open up, and you just follow the road.
Amazing.
And that's what I did, and that's how I made my life happen. You know what I mean? It didn't just I didn't just sit there waiting for it to happen. I walked down the road, and that gate opened, and I went down that road.
I love it. I think it's brilliant. And did you? So all the literature surrounding it says that it's a sabbatical that you took from. So it was Columbia that you went to.
Yes.
If I'm right. Did you have an intention to go back, or were you just?
1,000% had to go back.
Okay.
And that's one thing. After I started working with David Manley, and then, we would like go have lunch every day, and he was like really trying to persuade me to continue my classes out here in California. And I'm like, oh hell no! I'm got 3 semesters left at this Ivy League school that I got into, and I'm gonna finish. It's like my whole family and all my friends would kill me if I didn't get that degree. Even though the degree, whatever, but I have to complete it.
Yeah.
It's just diligence and gratitude.
So did they hold the job for you while you went back and finished, and then you traveled back again?
Well, yeah. So what happened was, David and I became involved, and we decided to get married. And I went back, finished school, and then we got married when I got done. Okay. So, yeah, more than the job was there waiting for me, for sure. Plus, okay. I was starting to become very useful as a very useful employee. So, of course, they wanted me back.
Yeah.
Besides the other reasons.
I'm really interested in so VTL was the name of the company that you began starting work for?
Vacuum Tube Logic of America, Incorporated. Yes.
To give it its full title. So they were making tube amplifiers, valve amplifiers. Mainly
audiophile tube amplifiers. And he had just started to work on some pro audio products. So what happened in 1989 were the Scientologists were looking for some mic pre's to go with their Massenburg board they had just bought for their big facility out in Hemet, California. So David and some other famous designers at the time submitted some, mic pre-designs, and his one, and they ordered 60 of them. And that was the birth of the Manley Pro Audio division right there. So
I mean,
that was pretty significant. In order for 60 of anything is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a strong start for sure,
yeah,
isn't it?
It's a strong
really
start.
strong start.
So then from there, that same kind of gain stage went into the gain stage of a Pultec kind of EQ. We called the enhanced Pultec, and I worked on that with David, just helping draw the schematics. That was one of my first technical jobs at the company after I learned how to, to build boards and solder and screw stuff together. Um, and I remember David came to visit me when I was back at Columbia, and we drove across the GWB and went to Teaneck, New Jersey, to find Eugene Schenk, who was a Pultec guy, but he had closed the company down like 10 years before or something, and he was not interested in anything we had to talk about.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because David was trying to offer him some licensing or royalties or something, and he's like, yeah, he just didn't want to do anything, so he sent us along. But I do remember that happening. I don't think he remembers it happening according to more modern stories. Steve Jackson, I think, has reported that Eugene Schenk didn't remember that encounter at all, but I remember that encounter. I promise it happened. I promise. Anyway.
I may. I'm hopefully speaking with Steve next week, so
cool.
I might pull him up on it.
We're good buddies these days.
Oh,
he's awesome.
Cool.
I respect him so much, and he's such a nice person. And his whole family.
He seems
great.
He's very difficult to tie down. So he's on holiday.
He's
next
busy.
Week. Yes.
Yeah, I don't think he has enough employees. I think he does a lot of it himself.
Oh right, I didn't know that. So I'll I might ask. I'm really excited to speak to him actually.
Yeah, he's a fine person.
So I'm interested in some of the more sort of technical things at the beginning of you at the company. So what electrical knowledge did you have when you first started working at VTL?
High school physics, and then one of the last classes I took back at Columbia. I think I took it after I went back. Might have been before. I forget now. I took a year of college physics as well. But as far as vacuum tubes go, they rolled a tube oscilloscope across the stage one day and said, there used to be vacuum tubes in these things, and that was that.
Amazing.
We did learn, how a TV tube works, horizontal deflection tubes, and did some calculations related to that. But that's it. and Ohm's law, and given the parameters, I can tell you if you shoot a bullet out of that pistol, where the bullet will lie. Where it'll end up. So that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that from my physics lessons. I remember not really feeling too engaged with. I found physics really interesting at school and didn't, but I didn't engage with it in a sort of in a physical way because I had no reason to. And then since becoming interested in sort of audio, suddenly there was a reason to understand it all. So when you first started work, was it how you were applying your practical knowledge that you'd learned? Well, you were applying knowledge that you'd learned at school.
Just good math studies over the years in high school, and 1 year or 1 semester of calculus in college. Knowing how to deal with a simple algebraic equation.
Yeah.
To solve, some simple parameters. And later on, after Excel came out, actually before that, with Lotus 123, I was starting to learn about, writing formulas in a computer. But with Excel, I really embraced that as far as being able to easily write something to automatically calculate a lot of things for me.
Okay. Was this something that? So obviously you took the opportunity to work there. Was it something that you were really eager to learn more about? Was electronics something? Because I get the feeling that you you weren't 100% sure what you were going to California for, and then you
Oh
found.
no, what that was my calling. I mean,
Oh,
once I
cool.
landed in that company, I realized like I'm meant to do this.
Oh,
I
amazing.
do like working with electronics. I love listening to music. I love making stuff sound better. I love learning about how to make stuff sound better. You know, what do you change to make that thing do that, or what 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 did you measure that you can hear, and vice versa, and exploring those relationships. And also in the business side, I had a penchant for, you know, business organization and creating systems and methods and programs and coding databases and shit like that. So you know, all of those things conspired to locked me down into manufacturing gear. And then later, the marketing aspect of it and getting into visual design, um, and also designing the equipment, you know, and that's kind of like little metallic sculptures that play sound, you know, and making those things. So I would say that my career has definitely embraced a lot of my natural talents and interests.
Oh,
So
cool. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Um, can you remember any particular moments in the early days where it felt like it clicked for you? Maybe working in a particular area of the company, or one thing where, um, I don't know, maybe like a light bulb moment of you thought, well, I love this. So maybe like the first, when that preamp order came in and you built those first set or whatever, just was there any kind of moment that really stands out as more significant than others?
Um, you know, I'm kind of a dopamine junkie that way. So every little problem that I solve, you know, creates that hit.
Yeah.
And there's a kabillion of those a day. When you're in manufacturing, there's all kinds of little tiny things to solve every day. So that kind of working in the weeds and working in the noise, I'm kind of used to that. My brain functions, it kind of thrives in that method there. I can stay busy doing very small things all the time, which is okay. But I I remember, um, yeah, it must have been like 31 years ago or something. Might have been 1990 or something. David came in and said, this guy called this. He's kind of famous, I think." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, who?" "Oh, it's Jackson Brown." I'm like, Jackson Brown. Oh yeah, he's really well known. He's fantastic, you know. And David didn't know who the hell he was. And so that was, and then I remember another time, I was also a big Neil Young fan. And I remember at the first AES show in 1990, this is back when we were all smoking cigarettes and smoking them inside. I was having a smoke break, and I was sitting next to a guy in the lunch area at the convention center. And it was John Nolan, who was like Neil Young's engineer. And I remember being like, oh my God, there's my link to Neil Young. Like, I was so excited. And it's funny, flash forward, you know, 32 years, we're friends today. And I bought a wooden cutting board from him because he's
Oh,
retired and
wow.
making cutting boards now, John is.
That's
So
incredible.
just like starting to run into people, I guess. I mean, I um it's cool. It's awesome. But you know, all this, like the quote famous people, they're just like us. They're you know, I don't
Well,
know. I've taken down that barrier in my head all the same. After, you know, meeting lots of quote famous people, it's they're just more people that are fun to hang out with.
yes. Well, I have a similar feeling um, doing this podcast, although I'm much further down the ladder than you are. But meeting lots of people that I would, you know, formerly would have been just a name on like a website that I was reading about or in a magazine or something, and then you chat to them and they everybody's normal. It's
Everyone's normal.
yeah, it's great. um, so when this sort of order of the preamps came in, these 60 preamps that you were building, what was the conversation from that point to starting to put it into these to these like the Pultec EQs and was so there was a tube mic was one of your first products. How did all of that
So
sort of evolve?
yeah, so David had come out of owning a studio complex in South Africa. That's where his prior work experience in the 60s and early 70s was.
Okay.
And he um, then he had an audiophile shop after that, I think, and he was also rebuilding leak amplifiers as an audiophile, and then eventually made his way to England and started Vacuum Tube Logic of Great Britain there, building audiophile equipment, and then ended up in California eventually, and then got that order. But see, because he initially came from the studio environment, it was kind of a natural thing to go back to that. So he had bought some gear out of England from various yard sales, as it were, studio yard sales. Um, like he had a Deca limiter that, maybe Tom Jones had sang through or something. Or he had a DISA limiter that was a cassette thing made by the Danish broadcast system. And he really liked that unit. And that's what the Variable Mu was based on, for instance. So he just wanted to get into that world anyway. So it was a natural progression. And then also at the same time, we were friends with Steve Hazelton, who was Doug Sachs's engineer. And Steve would come out a couple days a week and work with us. So actually, a lot of those early designs from those days were Steve's, not David's. Okay. Or Steve, largely contributed to the design. And that would be like the Gold Mic and the Rep C amplifying circuits. Just bits inside the circuits, like David first started with cathode followers, and Steve's like, have you tried the white cathode follower? It's a better circuit. So then everything switched to that, and so on. So, but Steve Hazelton was incredibly important to the first products, for sure.
Then, so this is a sort of going off on a side shoot, and this might be me putting my foot in my mouth massively, but so as far as I understand, broadly speaking, the sort of the way that the technological advances happened from sort of the 60s onwards. So they were using valve and tube technology through the 60s, and then transistor technology came in through the late 60s, and there was generally a move away from a valve technology through the 80s. I find it really interesting that you seem to start a company specializing in valve technology when as far as my understanding was, it wasn't that popular.
Tubes were all but dead in the audio world, for sure. There were still audio research and Conrad Johnson in the audiophile sector, and then Tube Tech and Summit Audio in the pro audio sector were the main gigs, and tubes were all but dead. But David was a very loud and boisterous person, and he wrote a tube propaganda book called the VTL book, and sold, I don't know, 30 or 50,000 copies of that or something. And it was just a whole bunch of arguments for why vacuum tubes are better,
Okay.
and and his philosophies about why he chooses this or that in circuits. I have not read that book in a really long time, but I do have a copy. So he was pretty smart, like marketing tubes through making a lot of noise about it,
Okay, so
in the press, getting reviews and being a bit controversial sometimes. He was sometimes like that train wreck you can't avoid looking at. But it did build the brand and built the enthusiasm for vacuum tube stuff, and he was kind of important with bringing tubes back to the forefront.
Yeah, I've been involved in this industry for, say, sort of 10 years or so, and it's all I've known through that time has been tubes are the best. Valves are the best. Valves
like we say, tubes rule.
Yeah, precisely, exactly. So you clearly played a huge part in that revival. There we go. Part 1 of my conversation with EveAnna Manley. Part 2 is coming next Tuesday. While I've got you here, I forgot to mention in the intro that I was obviously going to tell you which isolated drums I will send out on my mailing list. This week marks the 50th set of stems that I have made, which I am astounded by. I can't believe it. So to celebrate, I was going to make do like a big Beatles drop, but I've had so much work in that I haven't had time to do it justice. So I've decided I had 6 Rolling Stones covers tucked away, of which you heard Satisfaction in this podcast. So I've decided to send all 6 out in a oneer. And if you visit my website, All You Need Is Drums, and visit the archive, you can find those there. There's Get Off My Cloud, Satisfaction, and anyway, loads of others. You'll find them all there. So that just leaves me to say, if you'd like to get in contact with me, my email is joe@allyouneedisdrums.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can do that by visiting allyouneedisdrums.com and purchasing a lovely mug. And then, a huge thanks to my friend Joe Kane for the intro and outro music, and my good friend David Henshaw for the lovely artwork he supplies every week now. I will see you next Tuesday. Take care and goodbye.